Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 13th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. In a minute, I'll hand over to Dave Evans from the UK Trails Project, and he'll talk us through their new reports, hot off the press last month, the trail, its people, its place and time, an in-depth look at the state of mountain biking trails in the UK, and a summary of the first year's work of the project. He'll also give us a bit more detail on next steps for the project. So after we had a Q&A with Dave, we'll then open the floor up to a wider discussion, perhaps discussing some of the issues raised by the report, or even perhaps discussing the impacts of Storm Bern and Storm Darragh, which is a topical thing, and also give you guys a chance to share anything you need help or advice on, benefit, so you can benefit from the group's experience. So before we start, just a bit of housekeeping. If you could use the hands up icon at the bottom of the screen so we know you want to speak, that would be great, and I'll call people in turn. When asking your question, please say who you are and what group you're from. And can I also ask that you leave your video on during the call so everyone can see each other. And then also please change your display name to include the organisation you represent. So, for example, you can see mine is Robin Grant, UK MTB Trail Alliance. So having said that, over to you, Dave.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much, Robin, for inviting me to present for a second time to the UK Trails Alliance. The presentation I'm going to give you tonight is a summary of the launch of the trail, its place, its people, its time. This report is a summary of the first year of work I've done with the UK Trails Project, and it sets out the findings of the evidence-based report work we've done so far and where we're going into the future. So for anyone who has seen this talk before in Scotland, it's going to be a little bit shorter with the one in Scotland. It's also may lack energy, as I've just eaten what can only be called an unprofessional amount of pizza with my children. So it's not going to be as lively as that one after I've had my coffee. But the good news is I'm able to explain a little bit more about the work packages that we're going to be, in fact, we already are working on. And that will be making up the second phase of the project going for the next 2 years. And as people involved in trail management yourselves, I think that's going to be the most interest to the audience tonight. So without further ado, I shall attempt to share my screen. I'm normally a Teams user, so just bear with me a moment. So it should give me screen 2. That should go on to that. Okay, can you see the slides, please? Can people just give me a nod and a thumbs up? Wonderful, thank you very much. Okay, so for those who aren't aware, the UK Trails Project came about as a co-project established between SRAM and Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland. It's taken over 2 years in fruition to get to this stage. Because SRAM wanted to do a UK-wide project. They initially approached British Cycling, who, after several lengthy discussions, said they didn't really have the expertise and appetite to run a UK-wide project of this scale. So they suggested they popped up the road and discussed the project with Graeme McLean, head of Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland. And through his work with SRAM, they managed to put together a way that the project could sit under the Scottish system. Now, SRAM's aim for this project is to create sustainable, secure and suitable trails across the whole of the UK trail network. So that means we're going to have a more lasting, established legacy of trails for future generations. The project itself has 3 phases. As I've said, we've just come to the end of the first phase, the research phase, which I'm going to talk about now. And then I'm going to talk you into the second activity and action phase before there's going to be an evaluation phase near the end to see where we go next. So, for those who don't know who I am, I'm the project manager. I work for DMBinS. I'm a Welshman wearing a Scottish shirt covering the whole of the country, and that makes things quite interesting. I myself come from Mid Wales. I've been riding since the mid-90s. I currently live in Corris, where I've been for the last 14 years, and I'm a founder and director of W Mountain Biking, the local community interest company who looks after the trails there. We put that together about 10 years ago. And I've had a previous work in the mountain bike industry for about 8 years through my own business called Bike Corris. And key clients there were W Bike Park, NRW, and various other public and private sector bodies. So looking after trail management there. I'm an instrument agitation engineer by trade and spent about 15 years putting weather stations in awkward places for the renewables and climate research industry before that. So the theme of the report is, at the end of the day, we're all kids on bikes, aren't we? When we go out in the woods, we want to have friends, take our bikes and go and have fun. And bikes have been used as a metaphor for freedom, coming of age, and it's art reflecting life. And Kids on Bikes is now actually a film genre. So I was flicking through Rotten Tomatoes putting this together. It got me thinking that actually mountain biking itself is having this sort of loss of innocence, this coming of age, maturing, this sort of struggle to find its place in society. And that's kind of what I found over the last year. So the vision of the UK Trails Project has been to sort of pull together what we found to create a more sustainable future through better collaboration between the mountain bike community, the land management community, and to try and improve access where we can in a responsible way to open up and look after allow not just more trails, but ways to look after the trails we've got. We've got pockets of great success across the country. Many of you are involved with that, but we need to sort of learn from those and bring them together. So this year, so far, we've done 16 workshops with over 300 people attending, and used the information from that to create the themes, capture the themes, and put together 3 academic studies, surveys through partnership with Napier University. So those studies and surveys have been put together to an academic standard, and we were fortunate enough to have over 2,000 responses. After the studies were completed, I sat down and had about 30 interviews with key stakeholders, and then used data analysis, AI data analysis, to pull out again the common themes, the common points from those interviews, which have been used to pull together in the report. So the report is a summary of the work that's been undertaken. When I started putting together a whole UK-wide report, it was heading for 20,000 words, and it was getting on for unreadable. So those of you who are itching to say, actually, I want to have a look at this data, don't worry, there are more graphical, more data-based survey summaries reports coming out in the new year. Not only UK-wide, but also as best we can with the postcode sorting, we're going to be able to make those home nation specific. So I'm going to share with you the sort of top-end things, top-end findings that went into the summary report. So the things that were the most common themes were the need for greater communication, education, and collaboration. And we'll talk through who that's with and what it looks like. So communication needs to be between mountain bikers, land managers, and other groups using the countryside. So unless we're riding in a bike park, mountain biking doesn't happen in isolation. It's part of an ecosystem that comprises people, it comprises the landscape, the flora, the fauna, and everything else that's going on in there. So we're looking to help others learn from each other, and to help people in the different groups understand each other. And one of the first findings we found here was, one, there's often a different language between the land management community and the mountain bike community, even though we're existing in the same space. And the other thing is that we're operating on entirely different timescales. So a commercial tree crop might be 60, 80 years or so. So mountain biking has been around for around 40 years. It's also had a very rapid pace of development. So mountain biking has possibly reinvented itself 5 times in that 40 years. So that's led to a disconnect, both in the language and the time scale of which the two groups are working. So to get us to work better together, I've tried to sit down with the land management community, understand the concerns, the constraints, and also sit down with the mountain bike community and look at desires, and then try and work out where our shared values are. And once we've established the effective communication with each other, we can then move on to look at where the gaps are. What do we need to learn more about? So under the policy area, well, these can be broken down into 3 areas, really. Policy, right at the top, we go, what do we want to do? The second bit, process, how are we going to do it? And on the lower level, practical, how are we actually going to do this, nuts and bolts, on the ground? So in the policy box, we found there's a lack of understanding between mountain biking and land management. Land management perceives us as terrifying people who are going to tear up the landscape. Mountain bikers perhaps don't understand the full amount of work that goes on behind the scenes in a land manager's diary, in a land manager's day. And I can't look at a forest and say, is that habitat? Is that a working forest? And it's a tricky business to understand each other. So the next area is process. In the process area, we found that there's a lot of inconsistency between how different land managers work. And you got know more about this than anybody else. So my first thought was, just nip up to Scotland, go to Tweed Valley, get their got their paperwork, because Scotland's got 28 trade associations. They really lead the way. I'll travel around the country and we'll all be good to go. But that's the Dunning-Kruger effect at play. And I soon learned that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We're going to have to look at what the different laws are in each home country, the different policies, different processes used by each land manager. And things are going to be a bit more complex than I initially thought. However, the land managers are looking for a buy-in. They do want to make this move forwards. So it should be practical to create a framework looking to Scotland as the leader in the space, and then where we can slot in the different modules to make things work in the different home countries. Down on the ground, where things actually get interesting, we're looking for practical measures. So land managers need assurance, and they're asking for very much actually the same things as trade associations and volunteers are asking for. They're asking for training, they're asking for proof of competence, they're asking for to be shown how things have been done the right way. And we got the same feedback from the mountain bike community and the trail association community. People are saying, yeah, we want to work together. We want to do a better job. We want to learn about the habitats, the environment, and make our trails more sustainable. So that's another area that we'll be working in. So to make progress, we just understand how we're going to collaborate with each other and what the value of that is. As we're maturing, we know it's best to work with others. Again, many of you in the room here have succeeded in that and are leading the way. And one of the crucial things that's come out through discussions with, again, the mountain bike and the land management community is there's more than one way to skin a cat. Again, I initially thought that we were looking at trade associations across the country, but through talking about management levels with both the land management community and the mountain bike community, it became immediately clear that we need a scalable solution. And that scaling can allow us to pick the right solution for the right site. So it depends on how many people are using the site. It depends on how many other users are using the site. It depends on the accessibility of the site. If you're looking at from the bottom to the top of the slides here, what we're looking to do overall is try and help move riders out from doing bad things up towards do nothing, and better still, from do nothing into responsible use. So that is better, from red into orange into green. Once we're into green, no one solution is better than the other. And one area or one trail association can have many solutions. Let's talk about Dyfi Valley. This is an example I know best. We have Dan Atherton owning Dyfi Bike Park right at the top there. We have Dyfi Mountain Biking, our trail association, looking after the Climax Trail. Underneath that, we've got several informal groups who look after other trails in the area. And because we've got this generally working acceptably, other trails are tolerated by the land manager, where the trail sits within what they can tolerate. And it doesn't mean we can dig anywhere. Where people have come and tried that, those trails have got taken out pretty damn quick. So it's about having that sort of symbiotic system of working together and getting the right trail in the right place. And the other advantage of this system is the process is scalable. So if a site becomes more popular, if we want to start putting races on, if we will want to open a cafe at the bottom, advertise it, get people coming from around the world, you can go up or down the ladder. So it's got a lot, but there is a lot of work to be done to get a good understanding of what each level looks like. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So who needs to do what in which space, and how are we going to sort of move things together? I'm hoping to get land managers to, whoops, we've gone on one. Land managers to engage with the project. That we're doing that. That seems to be going quite well. We're asking land managers to help develop the system, to go back to their books and say, what is it you need from us? Tell us what you need, and make it consistent, and collaborate then in getting that out to people on the ground. That's going to be a little while before that starts happening, but we're on that road. Volunteers such as yourselves, you're already leading the way, and I'm just hoping that when we get to the point of putting things up onto the DMBinS server and getting the information we're going to be putting out there that you'll be able to engage with us, test the management models as they become available, and then provide feedback so we can start closing that loop. It's just a massive thank you for everyone who's in that space for getting it as far as we have. And I know the huge amounts of effort that goes into it. I know the huge amounts of despair when, despite your best efforts, it just suddenly stops for no apparent reason. We've been there in Dubby, and it takes a while, and then things start moving again. And riders, we're going to be reaching out to the riding communication and just say, what do you need to do? Support, join in, support your trail association. We're going to be doing social media campaigns, asking people to do your bit. And that's the point of that, is just to get people up from that red and orange, just getting onto the green. Because the more people we've got in the green, the less complaints we've got coming in. Less complaints we've got coming in, the more landowners are going to say, actually, these mountain bikers are all right, we can work with them. So if people can offer as much or as little time as they have. Now, we did have 10% of people, when surveyed and asked, did you want to get involved with the Trail Association, or do you do any maintenance on the trails, rather? That was the question. Do you do maintenance on the trails? 25% of people said yes. 25% of people said, yeah, I'd like to, but I don't know how. So we'd love to do more knowledge on that. And 10% of people said, no, I don't, and I don't want to. I just want to ride my bike. I'm busy, I'm stressed. I just want to escape from that, and that's what I do to escape. And we can respect that. So we're just going to ask people to do as little or as much as you can. It can just be as little as saying hi, as little as giving a couple of quid to your local TA. It all helps. It all moves us in the right direction. Bike industry themselves, well, this is one that I have quite a lot to comment upon. I think we need a big move forward. I think we need a big reboot. Bike industry itself claims to be in crisis, and is a good opportunity for it to move forwards by creating the right influence, setting examples, celebrating success, and working together to put something back into the trails, because without the trails, a bicycle is nothing. So the industry's starting to get the grips of that. We've seen Braund funding this project. We've seen Shimano's 10 million quid over 10 years for trails. Things are starting to move in the right direction, and my opinion, it's about time too. What's the reward for doing all this? The reward is integration. So I talked earlier about mountain biking having this coming of age moment, and the reward of coming to age is integrating with society. So we're not the only ones in this shared space, and by collaborating with other people, we're improving the perception of mountain biking. And as our perception improves, people understand us more. As people understand us more, mountain biking can integrate with society more. Everyone in the room here knows the society benefits from mountain biking. We have mental health, we have physical health, it can be community regeneration, it can be economic benefits. In our village, probably the local school has been kept open due to mountain bikers moving into the Dovey area. Without those breeding pairs, rural depopulation would have closed down that school. And there's a lot of different economic and social examples from around the UK. And as mountain biking comes out of the shadows, it becomes more welcomed. That's going to allow us to integrate more easily into communities. Some people might say, oh, mountain biking's all been about rebellion, hasn't it? It's always been a bit, kicking against it. But what counterculture idea wasn't? Mountain biking, I think, is going from the counterculture, is going from the outside and is coming into mainstream, the same way as other counterculture ideas have. Civil rights, environmentalism, wellness, all the bits are actually quite part of mountain biking are now taken for granted. So I think now's the time for mountain biking to go that way as well. So what we're looking for by pulling people together, working better, setting out the processes to do that work, is to improve the accessibility. So can more people get to the trails? Can more people ride the trails? Can they get there from home, ideally? Trails close to home is a big part of this, and it echoes what IMBA stand for in Europe as well. We're looking for adaptability as well. So we need to keep the commitment going to maintaining, sustaining, and most importantly, evolving the trail network. So I talked earlier about how mountain biking has reinvented itself every, 8 years or so. And I don't know what's coming next. Is enduro on the wane? Is there something new? Will riding uphill become fashionable again? I don't know. So when designing our trail network, we need to think about not just the trails we've got for now, but what's coming for tomorrow. So again, that good landowner relationship gets us in a good place to see, as the sport evolves, where are we going next? Because we're already having those conversations. Finally, we're looking to improve availability. And that means making mountain biking more of a constant in people's lives. The more generations can not only enjoy riding the bike for leisure, they might choose to ride the bike for commuting. So we get the knock-on benefits: fewer cars, less pollution, better air quality, etc., etc. And it also means that future generations can ride the bike for longer. So all in all, mountain biking previously wasn't really ready for society, but I think now post-COVID, we've shown the benefits of it, and we need to get things together so mountain biking can benefit society and leave a lasting legacy for the future generations. So where are we going to go next? This slide is a little bit busy. I might pause and then refer back to this because this shows where the work packages are setting out for the next phase of the project. And it might be sensible to stop here, take questions of what we've done so far. And when we're talking about moving forwards to the next phase, I can reference to this and say what the work is and where it fits with the rest of it. So thanks very much for listening. And I'll let Robin chair the questions, and I'll refer back to the previous slide as I explain where things fit together. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you, Dave. You are still sharing the screen.
Go. There we go.
Cool, thank you very much. So yeah, let's kick off with some questions. For a change, it looks like we've got, no, Stig's just clapping, not asking a question. Has anyone got, while you're all thinking of your questions, because no one has got a question currently, let us start with some questions from me, I suppose. So Dave, what was, I remember asking you a similar question when you presented 11 months ago in January, saying what was the sort of most surprising thing you'd found so far. I think you used the example of mountain bikers and troops mixing with each other. But what surprised you most since then?
What surprised me most since then? I suppose it's, as I said, the variety, the number of varieties that that are available to us to apply from a management point of view. I thought we would just be looking at trade association templates absolutely everywhere, but there's this wonderful space called stewardship, which is still being developed in Scotland and is still quite fluid in what it looks like and what it might yet be. All land managers working with this project are keen to explore it more and to learn more about it. So there seems to be the concept that there's different levels of management that can be applied at different sites and also can be applied by one organisation within one area. So although it looks vastly more complex now, I think there's going to be a greater level of flexibility, particularly allowing things to be scaled for the organisation's capabilities and the necessity of the management intervention on a given site.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. So that's sort of a model underneath trail associations where it's less formal. Is that right? Or
yeah. So the management levels are adoption of a trail. This is where things that would be formally adopted on paper and allow the trail association to promote the trail, to carry out dig days on them. And that would be something along the lines that we all know TBTA and what they've done in the Golfy area. That would be a good example of adoption. Stewardship sits a little below that, and it would allow people to do a certain amount of voluntary work on a certain amount of trails or an area of woodland. And in return for that, the trails can continue to exist. And the people get the place association and the pleasure of working together to look after those trails. So it's a bit less onerous, but there'd be fewer rewards on the flip side in terms of promotion and using them as a tourist attraction. again, it's not completely thrashed out yet what these levels are going, the finer details of these levels are going to look like, but the concept is certainly being enthusiastically discussed.
Okay, cool. Everyone, please remember to press the button to ask a question. But in the meantime, I'll carry on asking. You'll soon all get bored of me, I'm sure, and ask some questions of your own. So I suppose going back to the landowners themselves, you've obviously been involved in this process, and it's obviously not all landowners nationally. It's the big forestry bodies from the four nations. I mean, they are genuinely interested in engaging. I mean, obviously you might be slightly constrained in what you can say, but I suppose give us a flavour for how they feel about mountain biking at the moment, and how things have changed over the course of the project. How optimistic you're feeling.
Yeah, the conversations with land management have been good. Again, we're talking with the main four nation public bodies. I've also had positive conversations with several national parks and a handful of private landowners and other third sector landowners. So the general gist has been we've been wanting to do something for quite some time. What you're doing may not be perfect, but it's a good start. We're keen to get involved. That seems to be it in a nutshell. Things are going to vary from nation to nation. Things are going to vary from landowner to landowner. But the general gist is this is looking good. This is a good place to start, and we're keen to get involved to see how things move forwards.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. We have some questions. Tim, I think you're first.
Yeah, you hear me right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm probably future looking more. I'm not sure if this is something that thought of, but have you had any sort of thoughts about sort of local authority? I mean, and sort of particularly I'm thinking planning, which is always something that we deal with. I mean, obviously, let's what you're doing here sounds really great, and let's say that you succeed and bring peace to all landowners and trail builders all play. The next problem I could see coming along would be your local authority saying, well, this isn't a trail centre. You don't have permission to have bike parks here. You've got people coming here, who shouldn't be, because it's not it's a commercial forest. It's not a recreational centre. Like I say, I'm not trying to dump on what you've done up to now, because I think it's really good, but I'm just wondering whether there's been any sort of thought as to that potential next, potentially even more difficult step than bringing peace between landowners and trail builders.
Absolutely. No, you're right that planning is important, particularly from a commercial aspect. And once I've brought peace to mountain bikers and trail owners, trail developers throughout the UK, doing different planning for every local authority in the UK will be an absolute total.
A couple more weeks afterwards.
Yeah, it's a tough question, and planning is absolutely necessary. What pieces of work will be beneficial to that is two of the work packages. Number one is one that's called What is Mountain Biking? This is going to be a top-level fact sheet for decision makers, such as ministers, such as local government, saying, this is mountain biking, it is this, it is good for that. Here are some economic bullet points of the economic improvement from mountain biking. And it'll also say what it's not. And it'll say, it's not all crazy youths jumping off buildings. It's not hoodlums terrorizing the street. It's not thurons. And it'll spell out the differences between what mountain biking is and isn't. So that will be there on the UK Trails Project part of the DMBinS server for people to use. So I think that will be useful. We're also starting through a slightly different spin-off of this I'm putting people in contact to create an environmental and economic impact assessment of mountain biking in Wales, which will hopefully create some data to furnish people with more information for why getting planning and granting planning would be a good thing.
So I guess that sort of feels like leading towards feeding into local development plans and things like that in a utopian future kind of thing, where mountain biking forms part of those sort of, let's say, the local development plan for areas that recognise the benefit. I think that's a good. good way
Absolutely,
forward.
it's having some resource in our toolbox that people who are applying for local planning commissions, who are writing into the local area development plans, writing into the housing association plans, can make a case for mountain biking to be included in that and integrated in society, and we'll provide a small but significant amount of information, which will hopefully swing the decision makers in favour.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like I said, just to clarify, I wasn't, even if you could never solve that problem, I think what you're doing now is still really worthwhile. That wasn't me trying to say, haha, but you haven't thought of this.
Oh no, not at all.
It's just more of a personal curiosity for myself than.
Yeah, keep an eye on it. And when things will be coming out, sort of first maybe Q2 next year, Q1, Q2 next year, and that'll be stuff that will be genuinely useful to people doing planning.
Okay, great, thank you.
Cool, thanks, Tim. And that was Tim from Revolution. Tim, you forgot to say who you were. Just on your point, though, Tim. Yeah, I mean, I think there is some. We spent some time earlier in the year looking at planning issues, and actually there are some fairly interesting laws and precedents out there, especially when it comes to Crown land, i.e., land that is leased or owned by the Forestry England or NRW or Forestry Land Scotland or Forestry Service Northern Ireland. And because part of most of those forestry organisations' public remit is not just forestry work, but also providing recreational facilities to the public, they have, all of them have used their own sort of permitted development rights, and there's a special class of the Planning Act which applies to Crown land. So they don't have quite the same planning restrictions that other people do. But in theory, that means that mountain bike trails on land owned by those public landowners doesn't actually necessarily need planning permission. It can just be done under permitted development.
Obviously
that doesn't apply to private forests like yours.
Yeah, the landowner without a shiny hat. I don't get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but that's a fair point.
Ross, you've got a question, and you're on mute, Ross. Sorry.
Apologies. Thanks, Robin. Ross Adams, Chair of Mountain Bike Wales. My sort of question is on behalf of a group of people I know locally. So we talk about the do nothing element, David. So there's a local influential landowner, and there's some very unsanctioned trails on the local land. He was unaware of them. He's becoming aware of them. And the fear within that group is if they do something, then they could lose what little that they've got. So have you got any examples of where sort of doing nothing has not been the answer, whereas doing something has moved things along in a positive way? And how is that done in any similar circumstances, if you can?
Oh, that's a good one.
Sorry.
Do I have a specific example of that on the tip of my tongue? No. Do I have several mashup of examples in my head? Yes. One example of doing something comes from the east of England, where a large titled landowner has tolerated mountain biking on his site for some time. The local mountain bikers in that area managed to have a discussion with a member of that guy's management team, and discussions were had. Other people on this call probably know more about it than I do, and the result of that is that a sign at the boundary of the estate says people are welcome to walk and cycle and ride horses or bikes through that woodland on his estate. There's also a patch of dirt jumps on that estate, which are tucked away safely out of the way. And the site management staff visit that, and as long as it's kept tidy, those jumps have existed for several years. However, that estate's going to be threatened, subject to nearby housing development, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when more people live on the doorstep, more people go into that woodland, and that step change. Anytime you put a step change into any system, there's going to be some kind of output, and we don't know what that's going to be yet. So that's a good example of how things have ticked over in the sort of, it's above do nothing, it's in the responsible use. It's sort of ticking along, sort of, you can do that, just keep it under that level, lads, and it's fine. But again, there's going to be a step change going into that. When you've got more people in the system, it's likely that something's going to need to be done to help with that. We are working on another work package, which would be a sort of how to form a trail association. That'll be a sort of further update of the unauthorized trails guidance that is already available on a DMBinS server. That's going to be updated to take account of what these different levels are looking like once we've got a bit more detail on what particularly the responsible and stewardship sectors look like. So hopefully, again, middle of next year, there'll be some fact sheets, for want of a better word, guidance up there on that DMBinS server to help people through that.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Obviously, we'll link to all of those from the Trail Hub too. Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks. Hi all. I'm Mike from Woburn by Trails. Something Tim said triggered the thought from me is the local councils need to have a sort of public access forum. I think it's a legal requirement, and they discuss what help they can give and what they can promote for walkers, riders, cyclists, etc. in the local area. Now, we're on private land, but mountain biking, according to them, is considered as an elite sport. And therefore, when it comes to giving any assistance, we're bottom of the pile because apparently we can do it all ourselves. Any comments on that?
I'm not familiar with local access forums. I was asked to be on the Snowdonia one, but I simply don't have enough time in the day to do it. Mountain biking elite sport, I think we can all say that's true. I also think there's a lot of opportunity perhaps for the governing bodies, perhaps for British Cycling to get more involved in that space and see what assistance they can work with the local access forums from on a national perspective. Because again, the governing bodies are working in that space and looking at outreach, looking at greater participation and looking at improving the diversity of the sport. So it's not something I'm familiar with, but it's certainly something I'll feed back, and I think it's an important point. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, when we were set up many years ago, we were actually, we had a separate land manager, but they were partly sponsored by the local authorities.
Okay.
But because of the cutbacks and various other financial issues, we lost out heavily, i.e. we're not getting any support, whereas other areas without mountain biking are still being supported. So I know we're not as many, there's not as many users as there are walkers, but we're still up there and we still add an awful lot to the local economy. And it's just getting it through to these access forums that you can't just sort of brush us off as being elitist. My thoughts.
Yeah, again, the what is mountain biking information pack, I think, will help break down some of those preconceptions in the land management community, and hopefully will help open doors there.
Mike, what do you know what they meant by elite sport? I mean, does that mean it's people? It's only rich people taking part, or do they mean something slightly different to that? What was the meaning behind that?
There was no specific meaning, but you come across it quite a lot in that we're considered, I suppose it's because we do spend an awful lot of money on the machines, and we're all dressed up to the nines in whatever you want to wear, that people consider us going out of the way to spend money to do that rather than putting on a pair of trainers and just walking around a few trails. That's my opinion. I think we're seen as, I don't know, putting ourselves above everybody else. I'm not sure.
Okay, it's useful.
Can I jump in a sec, Robin?
Go on then.
I know there's other people with their hands up, but I'm actually a member of the local access forum in Northamptonshire. Well, there's two now because we've gone unitary and they've split the county in half. But the local access forum in, as I understand it, only looks after public rights of way.
This particular meeting didn't. It was, I mean, there are public rights of way on the private land, but it was to do with all types of users using this. It's a commercial forest, effectively. And
was it the council local access forum, or was it another body?
The friend who I've got who's on the forum said it is the local access forum, the council one. It's the legally required group that they have to have.
My understanding is they only look after public rights of way.
Yeah, I mean, they have sort of different statutory duties, but different councils use them in different ways. You know, in a lot of councils, they're sort of, you know, they don't even have their statutory numbers they're meant to have on them, and they're sort of, you know, hardly ever used. And in other councils, they're clearly using them for sort of consultations, not related just to public rights of way, as in that case. But it varies by council by council. Obviously, there's a difference in England and Wales and Scotland, and I'm not sure they exist in Scotland. Obviously, in Scotland and Wales, they have national access forums, but in England, it was decided we didn't need one, which is rather unfortunate. So we've got no forum to raise those sort of issues at an England national level. Bern, you've had your hand up for a while.
Hiya, Dave. You had mentioned that you had spoken to the landowners, the public landowners in all four provinces, or all four parts of the UK. What sort of engagement did you get from Forestry NI, or what's their reaction to the report, and how amenable were they to kind of changing their current policy towards mountain biking?
Right. Nice to see you again, Ben. Thanks for coming. Forestry NI engaged with me initially via Outscape and then directly. I met with Forestry NI when I went over to Northern Ireland last year, down at Castlewellan. Subsequently, we had follow-up one-to-one interviews with Forestry NI and other members of the various councils across Northern Ireland who fed into the project like that. The report's been welcomed, I'm led to believe. I haven't had any direct feedback from them so far, and they are interested in seeing the Northern Ireland specific data from the surveys when I get round to finishing that work off and getting that back across to you sometime in the first couple of months of next year. And those feedbacks include summaries of the interviews with the members of the mountain bike community, the key figures across all four home countries. So it'll be very much a two-way thing, and we'll be able to sum up what people have said there. But they are so far keen to engage, and they have contributed.
Thanks.
Hannah?
Hi,
Hello.
Hannah from Singletrack. As you know, Dave, I like to write grumpy things and be radical. And I was a little bit disappointed. I thought that the landowners got a bit of a easy ride in the report in a way, and Forestry England in particular. And it felt like the report was coming from the perspective of what do mountain bikers have to do to be allowed onto land, rather than how can landowners benefit from having mountain bikers on their land, and how can they welcome them? What could they do to make it easier? So we lost everyone. What's going on? There's Robocop on the screen. I don't know. So yeah, I kind of wondered, is Dave still there, Robin? Another hack.
I think,
he's there.
I think Hannah's still traumatized from our last call. We had someone hack the call, if you like, with a scary horror movie video that they played. And it took me a while to work out who they were and shut them off the call. Hopefully that's not happening again, but I'm hopefully a little bit more ready to react this time than I was last time.
Okay.
Carry on, Hannah.
Yeah.
I'm hearing everything, Hannah.
Okay, I'll keep ranting. So yeah, I just and it kind of fits in with what Tim was saying about having local planning policy that actually from the top down is recognizing that mountain biking is a good thing and can bring lots of health and economic benefits to an area, and so potentially bringing in a few more players around the board meetings or the work packages or whatever to try and influence that from the top down, instead of like all of us having to plug away at the grassroots with all these agreements. Like, can we not just get some people higher up to kind of go, yeah. So yes, how are you going to take things forward in the work packages, and is the board going to stay the same so that the landowners keep getting an easy ride?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Number one, is the board going to stay the same? Yes, I don't have any control of that. I work for them. So that was defined when the project set up about a year before I started. Robocop is still coming on here. So that's that one.
I've chucked it out for now. So
thank you. Can we just do it so we can do mountain biking all over the country? No. The reason for that is, as I adhered to earlier, I thought I'd be able to do just that. I thought I'd be able to nip up to Scotland, get the Trail Association documents from Tweed Valley, and we'd have it on a plate and it'd be ready to go. But no, there's different laws in every country. Each organisation has different practices. And the best way I can think to work forward with that is creating the framework. So each organisation, each country can slot in what's appropriate there. And where mountain biking sits in their product offering, as I put in the presentation in Scotland and as is in the report, it fits in with the other land managers' reasons and priorities for that given area. A piece of land could be commercial, it could be set aside for conservation, and it could be set aside for recreation. So land managers' priorities are governed by multiple things, and many of those things come from the elected governments to whom they are answerable. So even if they would like to put mountain bike trails everywhere, often they can't, one, for resource, and two, because their mandate is restricted by the government that they work for. Private sector can do what you want. So there's a lot to be done better, I think, in the private sector. And I do think, hopefully, by creating these different levels of management, creating work packages for how people can put together a trail association, and also explaining what is mountain biking, what are the benefits, will be able to help people engage with private landowners, either nationally on a big forestry basis or locally on a private landowner, small farmer, small forester, whatever, and get some trails put in on a more local basis to them.
Okay, I might be able to volunteer my skills and experience somewhat in there are umbrella bodies for local authorities. There's an LGA, represents all English local authorities. There's a Welsh one, and there's the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, which I used to work for, which does all the Scottish ones. And so there are three bodies. There'll be a Northern Irish one as well, I would assume, that are the umbrella body for local authorities, and they're a good way to get between Parliament and local authorities to talk about policy and speak to a lot of people in the room at once.
Well, that would be very, very useful, and I'd like to take up and discuss that further.
Yes, if you don't know that it exists, you wouldn't know that that it was there, because it's a completely kind of between government and local government thing. But yeah, I think it could be really useful to try and bring them into maybe a work package or a workshop, just so that they know that we're out there, kind of, from what we do, and it doesn't rely on an individual council officer in a local authority to think that bikes are great.
Yeah, that's certainly be a great way for spreading the message more. And I've just made a note of that to follow up with you. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else? Tim's got his hand up again.
Yeah, just I guess following up on Hannah's fun, and it's something that I've I've brought up before, and feel I make myself unpopular in these calls when I have these conversations. But what I will say just before I say it is, I am a landowner, land manager first, and a very distant second mountain biker, if I can even be classed as a mountain biker anymore. So when I say these things, I'm not saying it as I'm the owner of a bike park with a reputation for being at the more extreme end, and often people, I think, mistake my role in that bike park as being crazy mountain biker. I don't ride mountain bikes. I manage trails. I manage land. We are landowners. So I say what I'm about to say from here. And to jump on, sort of agree with what Hannah was saying, I think there is and has always been a bit of a framing issue with how this subject is framed when it comes to landowners. Landowners have a problem in that many of them are unable or unwilling to apply the resources necessary to control what goes on their land. And there's perfectly legitimate reasons for that, particularly larger landowners. And landowners have a problem that things that are potentially problematic are happening on their land. Now, I would never argue with a landowner that wants to control what goes on their land. If they're willing to put wardens or forest managers all over their land to make sure that nobody ever sticks a shovel in the ground on that land, that's their right, and some would say their legal responsibility to do so. But if they're not doing that, and they for any reason can't do that, then mountain bike groups, not all, I'm not saying there aren't ones that are causing problems, but mountain bike groups that actively want to engage are not the problem, they are their solution. And there is a little bit of this kind of, well, landowners are allowed to get away with this idea of, well, they shouldn't be on my land and I'll take it on principle. But that, principle's nice, but reality is that you are responsible for what goes on there and you're not managing it. So there's another side of pushing this as the solution for landowners. Thank God you've got this group of really keen volunteers willing to go up there for free on their weekends and work with you and work with the land to control what's going on there, so it's not a free-for-all. But you also have to meet those people in the middle. You can't expect them to bring on board the best trail builders, the most qualified trail builders. You have to work with them to try and move the ball forward and improve things, rather than just seeing them as the enemy. And I'm not saying you're particularly framing it like that, David. I wasn't suggesting that you are. I don't think you are at all. But I just was sort of triggered, I guess, a little bit by Hannah's sort of also agreement that landowners often seem to get, and I put myself in that battle, often get, we're held up on a little bit of a pedestal, which we shouldn't be, because we're not doing our jobs properly if we're not managing what's going on our lands.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good contribution. And I think what was, again, Robin asked me earlier, what's the biggest surprise there? And the surprise is how willing those I've spoken to are to explore what responsible use looks like and what stewardship looks like. Denial is no longer an option. We've got Strava, we've got heat maps, we've got YouTube. So the ship has sailed on saying, I didn't know that was there. I've got this acid test. If you don't think it sounds right, say it out loud with Your Honour on the end of it. Yeah. I didn't know that trail was there, Your Honour. Bollocks. Yeah.
Well, we'll move on to settlement then.
Yeah. So let's look at what responsible use looks like. So if we can find some way of writing down what that looks like, how do the land managers are able to talk with mountain bikers and say, this is okay, guys, you can go this far. Anything more than that, you're going to need to put a bit more back. If it's just a few trails tucked out of the way, if no one can get in there by accident, we got hucked to flat onto the highway, then that could sit under responsible use, that can sit under stewardship. It's acknowledging what responsible use is. So when the land manager writes down, I don't have the resource to have a ranger patrol the site weekly. I do know there's mountain biking here. I walk the patch once a year, chat with the guys who are doing it. It sits in that green on the risk assessment. Can a third party be harmed? No. If someone's going to harm themselves, are they going to be doing it of their own volition because they've chosen to go there and to ride that trail? Yeah, then it's as close as you can come to saying at your own risk in this day and age. And I think the fact that we're actually even talking about that with landowners, although slowly, we're talking about that with big national landowners, is a start. So we're just moving from that. We're ignoring mountain biking to, oh God, we can't cope with mountain biking, to now we're thinking about mountain biking, and we're thinking about different ways we can manage mountain biking. So it's taking time to get there, but we've gone through that panic phase, and now we're into we've got to do something practical.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I think it's thing I often harp on is the aim is better, not perfect.
Yeah.
Maybe perfect lies beyond better, but if there's no point sticking in a bad place just because you won't accept anything that's not perfect. And
no, if we can get 80% better, it's better to do that than have 2% perfect with every I and T dotted and crossed and every possible management agreement signed and sealed. If we can bring everybody up a bit, then have those understandings and those thresholds sort of clear, then we can do a lot more in the responsible use space than we could in the denial space and getting away with it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. Andy?
Hello. Andrew Davies here from DTV in Forest of Dean. Dave, I'm interested if any of the work package is going to lead to sort of I suppose, following on from really what Tim and Hannah have said, is just that next step in terms of the vision of where this could all go to. If everything works, if the land managers get what they want, if the mountain bikers get what they want, what's it going to look like? Are we going to have a golf fee an hour away from everyone in the country? How much can we support? How many miles of trails?
Wow.
What's the vision?
Dare I let myself dream? I dreamt a lot before I sort of first got the job. Then again, that old Dunning-Kruger effect, I panicked because I realized I was in that pit of despair going, oh my God, how are we going to do this? What I'd like to think we can see is people being able to engage on the mountain bike within the communities and have that those places close to home they can ride. I'd like to, and particularly thank you to Hannah for picking up on the local authority umbrellas, to be able to get mountain bike trails, small stuff close to home, pump tracks, small skills area type tracks in public spaces, so it becomes more of a part of the community, and it becomes as normal as going down the park for a kickabout. We've been thinking in other areas like that, like what other sports clubs could we partner with. We've been looking at other areas there. So again, it would be one of those tools that could sit on the shelf to help people go to. And I think you're right with having the what is mountain biking, that sort of top level sales pitch of what is mountain biking, why is it good, why do you want it in your community, might be the key to making all that happen. The big picture, right from the door, take the kids.
Yeah.
And something for people at all levels, progressive and variety.
The other thing sort of related to that potentially is, have you had a chance to speak to the sort of the business community? So either cafe owners, bike shop owners, hoteliers, pubs, because that seems to be part of the mix of if you've got a healthy mountain biking destination, you're going to have you're going to have the trails, you're going to have the businesses that are thriving off it, and you're going to have a land manager or a set of land managers who are happy with how the trade-off is working.
Yes, I've spoken to several places around the UK where that very much is the case. I don't think there's any sort of magic, any single thing that can magically bring it together. It's very much a symbiotic community, but it does rely on the security of the trails. If the trails are here today, gone tomorrow, then people are very reluctant to invest, very reluctant to move to an area. So stability is, as with anything economic, stability is what underpins the success there. So it's about having those relationships in place, those lasting relationships that can outlast the people involved. I formed a trail association 10 years ago. If you think forming one's hard, try resigning. I'm still trying to get out of it because I can focus on this job. is having those systems and those organisations in place so they can outlast the people and keep that going and sort of feed into the area for longer.
Yeah.
Cool. Jez?
Hi, it's Jez from Singletraction. Dave, I was just wondering if you've been able to quantify with land managers what the real downsides of mountain biking is. Because obviously that, I think it was Tim who said, well, there's this perception that there's a potential risk here. But do we really know, or have you been able to quantify what that risk really is? Because I always find when people ask questions, they're always a bit worried about mountain biking. Oh, it's dangerous, it's risky or whatever. But there's doesn't seem to be any information anywhere that says actually, how risky, not risky to the person, but risky to the land owners in terms of how often they get sued or whatever. And therefore there's an issue because of the mountain biking.
Two replies on that. One, how risky mountain biking is to the person in terms of participants. There's good figures on that in the visitor safety group manual, which all the land managers in the large public sector and many of the large private and third party sectors use. And we're much lower than rugby and football, and some of the more common sports, even when it comes to like incidents per capita per head. So those figures are readily available. In terms of the economic impact from claims, the other people have raised that question. I've put the question forward to the land management partners in this project, and they're looking at how they answer it, whether that's commercially confidential information and whether or not it can be put out in the public domain. What they can say, and what I am authorised to say, is yes, claims have been made. Yes, they're in the millions. Yes, there's claims ongoing. Yes, they're in the tens of the millions. And yes, that's a significant part of an uninsured budget. So big public sector land managers don't carry insurance. It comes out of the public purse. The other thing that land managers have replied with to this question is, they've got the legal and moral duty to prevent the accident in the first place. Doesn't matter who's paying for the claim. It's can we prevent that accident from happening, and that's their job. And the final point you've got to remember is, if it's your job to prevent an accident and you fail to do so, then you can be criminally liable, and no insurance keeps people out of prison. So that's where we are with it from the land manager's perspective so far. I haven't got any exact numbers yet. I have made a request for that. And whether or not we'll be able to do that remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of hear what you're saying. Also, it's how many of those claims actually fail? Because, personally, from my perspective, if I fall off, that's my fault. I've gone out to ride. I expect at some point to happen. If I get hurt, I get hurt. But I do get the feeling sometimes people just go, well, I've got nothing left in life. I've got to sue everybody and his dog. And I just wondered if even if they were to give sort of an indication of how many cases then get lost because they have done the proper job. You know what I mean? I'm not.
Yeah, how many are successfully defended? Again, I don't have the figure. It's been requested. They have an in-house legal team, so they would be able to they'd also be able to put a cost on how many hundreds of thousands of pounds a year are spent defending the claims, which again comes back to the point of don't have the accident, because then you don't need to defend the claim. So the balance, I am told, is prevention rather than fighting, rather than paying. So it's on that sort of pyramid system. If you can prevent 50 accidents, you can prevent so many claims.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, I mean, I did some research on this, well, probably a few years ago now, at least a couple of years ago now, and put some FOI requests in, and certainly at the time, none of the public national landowners actually paid out as a result of a claim. So no one had ever successfully sued them, and they'd never had to settle out of court. But as Dave pointed out, that doesn't mean they didn't spend money defending those claims. And certainly I'm aware of a large claim in process against a national landowner currently. And hopefully that will be successfully defended, but obviously no one knows the outcome of that yet. And there are also lots of claims against private mountain bike trails in play at the moment, which obviously can impact on, the overall liability space. Obviously, as soon as one of those claims pays out, whether that's a public landowner or a private facility, that will affect everyone's insurance premiums moving forward if insurers perceive a higher risk of insuring trails. Hannah.
Yeah, just to say, Jez, that I asked Dave a whole list of questions around that already because I was wondering the same thing. I can't actually remember, Dave, if I asked, but I'm kind of wanting to figure out whether the mountain biking public has a greater propensity to sue than, for example, pedestrians walking along going to a shopping centre. Because those would be comparable for like a local authority has to self-insure, or a forestry commission self-insures. Then are the dog walkers suing at a higher rate than the mountain bike riders or whatever? Like that's kind of what I was trying to get to with the list of stats that I asked you for, because it's one thing for there to be a real and realized risk, and another thing if the community is actually demonstrating that it doesn't have the same appetite for suing or trying to sue as maybe another part of the community. So yeah, we might be blamed for appearing dangerous, but maybe we accept that risk and we don't then go on to sue.
Again, I forwarded the request on, so we'll see when they come back. They are looking into it.
Thanks.
Yeah, they may not be able to because of commercial confidentiality, but I have asked the question.
Tim, you got your hand up again?
Yeah, just jumping on that question from yourself, Hannah, and Jed's apology, I think it was. Again, just from my own perspective, I think the problem with, say, between dog walkers and mountain bikers is you can, things like spinal injuries and neck injuries, the big ticket ones for when it comes to getting sued, are more likely when it comes to mountain bikers. And in terms of, the whole sort of, take the risk, it's a conversation I've had quite a lot of time. It never comes down to taking the risk. It comes down to dealing with the consequences, and, we will all sit here and say, oh, well, I'll take the risk and it's fine, I'll do it. But I always paint the picture of the scenario of being lying in a bed, being told that your life's over, you're never going to walk again, work again, take care of your family, all that's going to do. Oh, and by the way, social care in this country ain't great. Don't expect the NHS to be, looking after you night and day. So you're going to need tens of thousands of pounds a year for the rest of your life to pay for your care, and you can't work. No one in their right mind would say no to a solicitor that says they can take that problem away. So I think that's probably the difference. I mean, I'd be interested to see I'm sure people get seriously injured, particularly in rugby, maybe. But, most people in mountain biking, if you break your collarbone or you twist your wrist, probably aren't going to sue. But the big ones, and landowners have a right to be and should be worried about it, particularly if they're kind of burying their head in the sand a little bit about what's going on their land. And if somebody needs millions of quid worth of care and there's a landowner with a juicy insurance policy there, they're going to come after you, regardless of whether they think it's your fault. The solicitor will figure out why it was your fault later on. So I think it is a tricky thing. But I always come back to the same thing, which is, do the work, manage the problem, mitigate it, provide the duty of care, let people know what the risks are, what they're getting themselves in for, and then you do at least have some kind of defence. To go back to what David said earlier, going in there and say, well, I never wanted them on my land in the first place, Your Honour. That ain't a defence. Not going to work, But yeah, it's a difficult and scary situation. But I do think mountain biking probably is slightly more prone to the danger of liability than other activities.
Absolutely. And the other point that the land managers on my project raised, that even if it's not the rider themselves that sue, it's their partner who now has to do close personal care for them for the rest of their lives. And should they be doing that? No, they shouldn't. And also, if it's your child is injured, then you're not just going to want some money, or if your child's killed, you're going to want someone in prison. And that's a completely fair point to take.
That's a whole other issue. A whole other terrifying issue as a landowner. So yeah, there are I think there are legitimate concerns that landowners should have about this. But like with everything, don't react with fear, react with action and proactivity and working in every way you can to reduce it, but also to show that, you know, I did what we could up to the point, but the person was given all the information, they decided to give it a go, and it unfortunately didn't work out. You know, that's my hobby horse.
Cool, thanks, Tim. Anyone else got any questions? While you're all thinking of your next question, Dave, you mentioned moving forward. You showed us the slide very briefly and then took it off the screen. Do you want to talk a bit more about that now?
I did, yeah. Shall I let's pop that up so I can talk through it, if I may. It's mostly so I can remember where everything fits together. So I'll just pop that one up. Can we see that slide, everybody? Can I see everybody?
Not yet. It's not appeared yet.
Yes, here we go. Let's try again.
Yeah, it looks like it's appearing now.
There we go. Okay, I'm going to leave it with the rest of PowerPoint on, because I hope you can see it okay. So on the left-hand side, we've got the different levels of management. Let's start in the bottom left-hand corner. So we want to move people from doing nothing, doing bad things, to doing nothing into responsible use. So that's the part we were just touching on there with Tim. So if we've got more people in responsible use, more people talking between riders and landowners saying this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable, then that's better. Once we're into the green, everything is equal depending on the site. In no particular order, Work Pack 5 is working with Fresh Cuts Media. That's with Cuts Media in Scotland. We're putting out a series of social media shorts and then a longer production in the first quarter of next year, aimed at educating mountain bikers. The theme's going to be sort of around do your bit to look after the trails, do your bit to be fitting with the community, do your bit to understand what happens in this landscape and where you sit within the landscape. So that's a sort of behaviour nudge to try and get people, like 80% doing a little bit better is better than 2% being perfect. So going along the responsible use line, Work Package 3 and 4 is two fact sheets, for want of a better word, for those who are the Blue Peter age. What's mountain biking, to go for landowners and decision makers, explain the benefits of mountain biking, what it is, what it isn't, why they want it, why they should have it on their land. And then Work Pack 4 is what's land management, and that's going to be mostly for use within the mountain bike community. And that can be used by anyone if it's people wanting to understand more about land management before approaching them with their trails association, but approaching them about the trails. It's going to be useful, hopefully, for people in the mountain bike media landscape, sort of understanding again what's going on in this space. And it's just going to be a general sort of land management in a nutshell, explaining where mountain biking fits in their vast array of often conflicting priorities. As we move up a little bit more, we need to define what the management levels are. This is the one I talked about earlier. It's going to be more of a framework where we can slot in the different components for different countries. So it's like each country runs a different operating system, and we're trying to write one piece of software. We can't write one piece of software. We're going to have to modify it to run in each different country. Insurance, behind the scenes, we're talking with a big insurer to see what can be done in terms of umbrella cover to trail associations. Insurers, first thing insurers said is, okay, you've got a car. You want to show me your car. You're telling me it's a car. You're telling me it's a Ford Escort. Is it the 1.3L? Is it the RS Cosworth? We need to know what those management levels look like, and what piece of work, what works are being carried out at each level, and also what delegated authority is being passed at each level before we can ask the insurer to give an accurate and valid quote. So those two are sort of working in order, in sequence. So once we've got the definition of the management levels, then we can ask for insurance. Going towards the end of it, how to form a trail association, talked about that already. It's going to be a sort of how to, with a hand-holding document with what you need, who you need to speak to, what you need to prepare, places for people to put their own notes in, and it will sort of talk them through the process in a friendly way to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. And finally, training for trail associations. We're working with DIRT, part of MTB Europe training program to get the appropriate dig leader, trail inspector, and so on training packages in place. But again, what's needed will come out of work package 2, where we define what the management levels are. Sitting outside of that, got the summary study for each home nation. That's coming in the first quarter of next year. Governance and learning from other NGBs. Looking to put together in the summer next year a workshop, a gathering rather, of everyone in the mountain biking governance and leadership space to thrash out who's doing what, where, what we need to do, where the gaps are, and look at what we can learn from other NGBs. Land managers seem quite fond of British Mountaineering Council, particularly because of their good comms between climbers, in terms of informing climbers where crags are closed, where there's nesting restrictions, and so on and so forth. We've also got things we can learn from the British Horse Society, Paddle UK. So I'm already speaking with representatives of those NGBs to see what we can pull together and how we can learn from each other. And hopefully out of that, we can come with a bigger picture of who's doing what in the mountain bike space, what's missing, and how we're going to move that forwards. Last but not least, down in the bottom corner, we're all familiar with the crisis NRW is having in Wales. Got a small amount of work going on with them, small but important amount of work going on with them to help them realise the value of their trail assets in Wales, and that the value exists not just in a monetary space, but in a community space as well. So, anyone got any questions on all of that? Sorry, that's quite a busy slide, but it's the way it sort of fits together in my mind, and it'll become more apparent as we start moving through, as things start dropping out to this.
Ross has got his hand up.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, Dave. Dave, you might have said, and I missed it, but work package 3, what is MTB? Have you got a time frame on that?
I think we're going to be looking end of Q1, early Q2 next year. I've got a meeting on Wednesday to get these into some kind of order and then put the time scales onto them. So I'll be able to update people more next week. Unfortunately, I don't quite have the final timelines yet.
No, that's great. It's just good to know. We're doing a sort of bit of work around influencing sort of key stakeholders, particularly decision makers within the Senate.
Yeah,
and we've highlighted that identifying what actually is mountain biking, what are the benefits of it. So I know you're looking at this from a sort of landowner, land management perspective, which is key, but there's also a crossover into sort of accessing any types of funding or decision makers or influencing from a sort of government perspective as well. Yeah. So that'd be handy.
That piece of work will be as generic and as open as possible, and it's going to be written in a similar style to the first report. So it's accessible and readable by anyone who's a decision maker, and they're going to pick that up, not knowing what mountain biking is, and go away going, "I want that."
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Bern, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Dave. Just in relation to the insurance, but I'm kind of assuming it's Zurich that you're talking to, because Zurich seem to be the sole provider for insurance for trail associations. But just kind of on that point, we have in Cave Hill, we have just paid our annual insurance premium, and it was £652. Now I know through this forum, talking to other trail associations in the mainland, that they're similar, exactly the same policies, because I've looked at them, and similar trail associations. There's a massive discrepancy around all the provinces in the UK. So I would kind of be keen that you maybe include that to kind of challenge the insurance company as to why there's such a massive discrepancy for the identical same policy And I'm talking about, I know that there's, you used the analogy about cars, insuring a Cosworth and insuring a Mini. Yeah, that's, but at the end of the day, the risks are the same for trail associations, and all of us have our own preventative and reactive maintenance schemes and inspection regimes in place. So there's controls there, which you sort of think should negate it, but I'd be keen to kind of hear a wee bit more about that, strand, but as it does develop.
Yes, insurance is very important. It's not Zurich we're speaking to; it's another provider who is active in the bicycle space. And I've come off a call in Scotland today where they've been charged £2,300 for a year's worth of cover. So again, the cost seems to vary enormously. I'll just have to keep feeding back as we get an update, but it seems to be knowing and defining what that work is and tying it down is what this particular insurer is keen on. Hopefully, once we've tied it down, that will reduce the variation so much. There will be other factors in there, but hopefully that will make it fairer for everybody. It remains to be seen. And so insurance is a complex area. It's outside of my previous experience. So I am being led by people who know more than I in that sector.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys. While other people think of questions, Dave, so I mean, Hannah mentioned this earlier when she asked her first question, and it's something that comes up quite frequently in conversation with different trail associations and trail groups. Is at first reading this, the report did seem a little landowner centric, and I totally understand the reasons why. But part of the perception issue, I think, is the fact that the steering group for the UK Trails project is, it has got the landowners on it and has got the NGBs on it. And obviously, as you know, the NGBs aren't necessarily viewed by mountain bikers as representing their interests. There's no plans at all to change that. I mean, and obviously, representing the UK MTB Trail Alliance, as I do, we put our hands up to be that representative of mountain bikers and trail associations. But there's no prospect of that changing, in your opinion.
But what we're looking to do later on into 2025 is get all the players in the governance space and leadership space together, see who's doing what, see what is needed, and then who's going to be most active in different areas. There's the setup of the steering group of this project was done at least a year, possibly two, before I came into post. And as the person who works for them, no, I'm not in a position to change it. That's where we are at the moment. However, people outside of that steering group do have a certain amount of privileges that those inside don't. Because it's steering groups made up of public sector bodies. Public sector bodies can't lobby government, they can't campaign, they can't do a lot of more direct approaches. So I can't do that with this project, even if I'd like to. So there's advantages and disadvantages of being in or out.
Yeah, although, well, I mean, from a UK Trail Alliance perspective, we feel we could still lobby governments and still be on the steering committee. I don't think they would be mutually exclusive, maybe. But I suppose moving on then, the work packages you've laid out. By the way, your naming of the work packages, your WP4 and WP5, don't quite match up on your slide to what you've got in the report. Just no.
Yeah, do that again.
But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a some of them are quite sensitive. Probably don't need much input from the community that others do. What are your plans to involve the community in different work packages?
When we find the time for when we see the benefit in the community engagement, and there will be good opportunities for community engagement, we'll be looking to reach out to the parts of the community that are using these work packages, going to be using these work packages, or trialing the work packages, and getting feedback from them. I can't give any further timescales or how that's going to look just yet, or what that feedback process is going to look like just yet. So that's what we're working on for the rest of this week, really.
Okay, because I mean, again, from a UK MTB Trail Alliance perspective, it would be good to be, representing our members in quite a few of those work packages, and doing that as soon as possible before before things become too final, and perhaps things end up in a way that we would have preferred them not to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll be, as I said, when things are due a public review, they'll be circulated in public. So the mountain bike community can put feedback in, and as and when that becomes necessary, we'll be welcoming that feedback then.
So I mean, again, going back to my point before, I think the community would say that would be necessary as soon as possible, because otherwise it's just the landowners deciding when that's necessary.
Well, I think the cycling NGBs would say otherwise, as there are 4 cycling NGBs on the steering group. So yeah, it's going to be opportunities for public feedback, and when they come, they'll be put out there.
Okay, so but you can't give us any more detail at this stage about when that would be?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay. I'm going to go to Hannah on this one, because it might be relevant to what we've just discussed.
Yeah, I think, Dave, it's really important that you get some more grassroots people involved in the work packages, even if they're not on the board. It needs that grassroots buy-in. Otherwise, it's something that's being done to us by British Cycling and the landowners, rather than something that we can all get on board with. And I think it'll be so important to delivering that positive outcome from all the work, which there is the potential for, but you've got to take the community with you. And I really think it's something that needs to be discussed at board level, perhaps. I'd be happy to put my head on the line and be that person that says that, because I'm in one of the few people that's in the position between the industry and the people and the community, and I'm seeing it in the forums, in the comment section. It's my job to read that stuff. So yeah, I cannot say it strongly enough that you have to get somebody other than British Cycling and the other official bodies in there with the landowners.
Okay, I've made a note of that, and that's something we can discuss this week.
Bern?
Yeah, no, I'd just like to come behind Hannah and just totally reiterate what you said, because it's something that I'll be quite frank, Dave, and we have had some frank email exchanges where the grassroots mountain bikers in Northern Ireland are not represented on that steering group, and our views are not being represented properly. Cycling Ireland and Outscape are a walking group, and a non-governmental body that is just there to get funds to produce walking trails, and any mountain bike trails that they've been involved in, they've been a complete mess of them, and they're just not respected by the mountain bike community. We were horrified to see them on the steering group, and we strongly suspect that your findings are being affected by the members on that steering group, because there's just there isn't any decent mountain bike representation from Northern Ireland, and that's a fact.
Okay. Well, again, I'll take that point on board, and just I can assure people that when we get to the country-specific report summaries, that they take into account feedback from the input from the key stakeholders in the mountain bike communities in all 4 home countries. Bern obviously includes yourself, it includes several other members of the mountain bike community in Northern Ireland, not in the groups that you've talked about, and we've done that elsewhere in the UK. So hopefully that will capture, or try and capture, that level of feedback. And that feedback is going in, and that's going to the people on the steering group who may or may not be the best representatives at the moment.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hannah, you had your hand up. You take it down. Andy, you had a question before, but you took it down. I don't know if the conversation moved on.
Yeah, I just wanted that to sort of play. I don't know. It's my question was about race organisers and their input, and yeah, I suppose there's so much stuff about racing. Just from a trail association point of view, the fact that you've got races taking place on your trails and how you manage that side of things. You've got you know, how do you go about if you're if you're forming a trail association, how do you get races? How do you go about that process of getting a race on your land? That sort of side of things. Is racing in scope of any of those work packages?
Racing's not directly in any of the work packages, but it is something that's been picked up upon by, again, the NGBs. The NGBs have been feeding in input from their side, saying, yeah, you know, we want to support more racing. We want to make to have trails being capable of being used for racing. We want trails to have the what's it called, periphery facilities that can be used for racing, and the follow-up work after them to make them sustainable to hold racing. So racing is being talked about. It doesn't fit in anything directly, but it's something that yeah, it certainly needs to be borne in mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Has anyone got any more questions? Okay. So one of the things I was hoping we might talk about on the call, I suppose, is that is rather than just what Dave has presented to us today, but actually what the contents of the report itself. I don't know if anyone's given that any thought or got any comment on, I suppose, anything that was raised in the report rather than what Dave's talked about, or the work packages, or perhaps anything that's missing from the project moving forward. Have a think about that. And I suppose one of the questions I had earlier, which the conversation moved on, was one of the biggest issues that people come to the UK MTB Trail Alliance with is where they've got a set of local trails. Quite often they've been there for a long time, and for whatever reason, quite often the reasons aren't clear. The landowner changes their attitude to those trails, and decides those trails are no longer acceptable. I mean, do you foresee? We talked a lot about very positive examples, but unfortunately, what comes up most frequently is those negative examples where, as I said, the landowner just decides they don't want the trails on that land anymore. And quite often they're the only trails for miles, and there is no other local provision. Do you foresee any impact the project might make on those sorts of situations, Dave?
Absolutely. Yeah, those kind of trails, as Tim has alluded to, have sat in the ignored space for many, many years. And as we now know, nothing is hidden anymore, nothing's secret anymore. So the landowners are sort of waking up to their liability and often becoming scared because they don't know what's happening, and they're fearing for what they could be letting themselves in for. So I hope this project is going to be able to help both the mountain bikers and the land managers by explaining what is mountain biking, what is land management, and enabling those people to learn from each other and learn the language of each other, speak to each other, and then have that conversation as to what can and can't take place on that land. And again, to put those control measures in place to allow the trails to exist, to allow the communities to benefit from the mountain biking, and hopefully to allow even the landowners to benefit as well. So I think a number of things coming out of this are going to be able to help people move on from that sort of cat and mouse or fearful space into a more sort of mutual understanding space where they can have a conversation and say, yeah, this is acceptable. If you want to do any more, you're going to need to do a bit more input. And we're not going to be able to win over everybody. We're not going to be able to change everyone's opinion, but by having, if 80% of being a bit better, and people are talking a bit more openly, hopefully, with the tools we can provide, we can do that so communities don't lose what's on their doorstep.
And just to, I suppose, just to follow up on that, and again, is, you know, quite often the issues at a local level. And I suppose, you know, the follow-up question therefore is if you've got agreement at a national level with the national landowners on these different frameworks you're putting in place, quite often you'll be customizing them for those landowners themselves, because they'll be different, I want to assume, for each landowner, each country. How confident are you at this stage that will actually get flowed down to a local level where those trails exist?
Well, I'd love to say I was confident. However, we all know how big and cumbersome local authorities can be and big organisations can be. But I think by having the work in the process sector, that middle ground, it will translate and make the pathways from policy, which all the landowners have. We want to, you know, people to enjoy our countryside for health and well-being, blah, blah, blah. And practical on the ground, you know, you need to have your inspection and training and insurance and whatever. It's having that process so people can follow it, tick the boxes, move through efficiently. And I think once those are in place in the land management bodies, it will give a lot of reassurance to staff. As I've heard from a lot of staff in the land management organisations, we'd love to do it, but we don't know how. And if we can provide the resource so they know how, then I think that will help things move forwards.
Okay, good answer. Sorry, I keep turning my video on and off. Ross, you've got a question.
Yeah, thanks. Dave, you mentioned then about getting the message across. I think there's a bit of piece of work to do, and I don't know whether you guys are best placed to do it or who is, but I come across, and I don't think I'm unique, you come across a lot of riders not understanding the issues that landowners, land managers face in terms of all the things that we've sort of spoken about around use of forest, use of land from a commercial, a conservation, a risk management perspective, and they just get frustrated when a trail's closed or a trail centre's closed because of weather conditions or whatever that might be. And there's a real lack of understanding amongst a certain group of riders, probably not the type of people who join this type of call, because we get it and we're involved with it and we seek that information out and we equip ourselves with that knowledge. But there's a lot of people just ride their bikes. How do we get that information out to them so they start to understand and appreciate the land manager's perspective?
I've had a great deal of thought into this. I think it's due to the different timescales we're operating on. Land managers, public sector land management set up post-First World War. Tree lifespan, we're in the second harvest of a crop of trees. Resource planning has been based around growing trees, chopping them down. So the amount of resource available has already been planned as part of that process. Mountain biking has arrived on this scene very late, very suddenly, and very noisily. And as that's obviously caused a disruption to the land management community. Furthermore, because mountain biking has existed for less than the period of a lifespan of a tree, we're operating on a different time scale. So I've always ridden that trail my whole life. And now the trees, it's all been chopped down, but it was always meant to be chopped down. That was the land management plan. And I think because people are existing, possibly because they're existing in that sort of concept of permanence of a trail, when it becomes impermanent, I think people display a grief reaction to a sudden loss. There's denial. I'm going to drop over that fence. I'm going to ride it anyway. There's anger. Oh, bloody forestry's cut it down. There's bargaining, but we can look after it. There's depression. Oh, it's gone now. And then there's acceptance. Oh, well, we'll dig another one over there. And I think we need to sort of explore the sort of emotional intelligence of mountain biking and get people to realise it's not just us in this space. It's not we're within there with other users. We're in there with other plans. We're in there operating on a different timescale to ourselves. And hopefully, when that penny drops, it's certainly done it for me. It sort of scared me. Oh, shit, I'm not actually on this planet very long. I should really probably look after my landscape a bit better. So what we're actually going to do to try and achieve that is not just Dave give late night sermons, but it's part of the Fresh Cuts campaigns, getting people to do the bit, getting people to understand what is land management. And once we've got that what is land management fact sheet, for want of a better word, we're going to be approaching the mountain bike media. We're going to be approaching the industry particularly, to say, look, you've got influencers. Let's see if we can do some positive influencers. Let's see if we can highlight what people need to be learning about. I'm not talking about turning everybody into sort of eco warriors, but I'm just talking about getting that level of knowledge up and getting people to have a little think about, the landscape we're riding in.
Thanks, Dave.
Jess, you've got a question?
Yeah, just following on from that, Dave. One thing about land managers is, to be honest, their communication is absolutely appalling. Well, I'm talking particularly about forestry, if I'm honest, because that's what I'm mostly involved in. But their social is questionable in terms of putting stuff out for mountain bikers. It's generally there's not a huge amount for mountain biking in the social stuff that they put out. Their websites are absolutely diabolical when it comes to keeping people up to date as what's happening and why it's happening and things like that. Dalby at the moment is closed just because of the storm this weekend, which they put out on social media. But then in the first social media post, it says check the website for more information. The first thing I did was go check the website, which was talking about Storm Bern.
Yeah.
So I do feel that while we need to push out and sort of try and involve mountain bikers and get it in the social and get it in the press and everything else, but when they're not helping themselves at the moment, because if you're going somewhere for the weekend, I go to Scotland. I've got something booked for Glen Tress for May next year. I can't go on their website and go over look what's happening. Have they got any events on that's going to clash with that weekend or whatever? Or there's the rallies, which are quite often booked a year in advance. They don't put it on their website, so you can rock up and so I do really think that they've got a lot of work to do to make themselves more information friendly. Let's put it that way, and timely.
I couldn't agree more. So yes, with my director of the local trail association hat on. Again, we get information very last minute in terms of closures for rallies or whatever. And we all know years of planning goes into that. And then it's a sort of back-footed process to get that information out. And I think improving comms and highlighting the need to get communication out of those organisations, which I've just made a note of that to report back and say, look, you've got to get better at this. The other thing that all the land managers, not just the big ones, but even the small ones, have picked up on, they said, how do I reach the bloody mountain bikers? If I want to reach the horse riders, I go to the British Horse Society. If I want to reach the climbers, I go to the BMC. Like if we wanted to go and climb a crag tomorrow, we could have a quick Google by postcode and see if there's any restrictions in place. So there is that need for a much more transparent and immediate communication system. The land managers are recognising it. They are recognising it themselves that they're not great. I will certainly be feeding that back and seeing what we do to make a two-way process there.
Yeah, I know because it's particularly with the commercial forest. I don't think they help themselves because I don't think their contracts are very good. In that they sell the timber standing, but then the contractor or whoever buys it only has to give 6 weeks notice that they're coming in to take it down, but then they don't always turn up.
Yes.
Again, this is Dalby because I'm quite heavily involved. So there's 2 sections that are currently closed because they're harvesting. Now that was supposed to happen start well over a month ago. I think it was 2 months ago. Oh, they're closing it Monday. Now, they didn't put anything out because they didn't know they were going to turn up. They didn't turn up for 3 weeks
Yeah.
to start work. And now it's closed, but there's still nothing on the website to say that those 2 sections are closed and there's a diversion.
Now, I've got an interesting anecdote from this. A local trail association not far from here, somebody went round a corner on a trail and found a 21-ton excavator in the middle of the trail, putting in a harvesting extraction route. There'd been no comms, no closures, and that went down to the near miss from on the contractor because they missed everything out. So forestry do take this very seriously when it comes into the Health and Safety of Work Act point of view, and they do know they need to be better. And I think by leaning on them from that point of view, so you can have timely and accurate communications about trail closures. They can see that from the safety point of view. So hopefully there'll be a way of leaning on that to get a better community response by making them do what they've got to do legally better.
Yeah, cheers.
Ross?
Yeah, just again, moving on from that point as well, I attended the latest public consultation meeting with NRW around the closure at Coillte Brennan for the cafe and facilities there. And one of the things that came up there was a lot of misinformation had been shared online by various different groups. So the question to NRW was about them getting in front of that messaging and owning that space themselves to shut down that misinformation. And they openly admitted that they weren't very good at that. It wasn't a huge skill set of theirs as a government organisation and massive landowner. So one of the sort of outcomes that we spoke about there was that the people in that room who were good at engagement and messaging and social media, that they could be the avenue for that. But NRW needed to get in front of it first, and then we could share that into those spaces and reach those mountain bikers and reach those audiences that they were struggling to reach and speak to. So that was a nice outcome from that meeting, and it's something that hopefully will be taken forward. But yeah, it was just good that NRW were sort of open to that conversation and admitted that wasn't a space they were great in.
Yeah, there does seem to be admissions now of, hey, we weren't very good at this. We need to do better, and we're looking to work with people to do that. So hopefully we'll see some positive changes eventually. It's going to be a turbulent year at least, but the acceptance of we need to be better at this is at least a starting point.
Cool. Unless anyone has any more questions, seeing as it's now 10 to 10, I might bring things to a close. Does anyone want to talk about any other issues? Obviously, very topically at the moment, we had Storm Bert 2 weeks ago and Storm Darragh this weekend. Storm Bert, we seem to have got off quite lightly, although, to be honest, there were still trees down on trails up and down the country, just not as many as there could have been. Storm Darragh seems to have impacted certain areas of the country, North Wales and the southwest of England pretty bad. It sounds like it's going to take months for trails to recover. I don't know if there's anyone who wants to talk around any of those issues. What can we as a community do to help? Is an obvious question. The only answer I really have currently is to try and encourage the riding public to volunteer their time to trail associations and trail groups and donate to their local trail groups. But does anyone have any ideas beyond that, or anything else to add on that front? Go on, Mike.
I just want to quickly say, as I said in my comment on your post, is that every time we look at a section, whilst we're doing some drainage work or we're improving the flow of the trail, part of our team is always looking for weak or dying trees, and we try and remove them at that point. So when it came to the last 2 storms, I've spent half a day today just clearing everything that's a problem. And it was mostly, to be honest, brash. So it's just being prepared, getting out there all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a lot of trail associations don't have the luxury or the ability to make it a luxury because you're working very hard on it. You know, don't have the power to remove dead trees. Do you see what I mean? I mean, I suppose they could report them to their landowner in some cases, but whether that would ever get actioned or not is a different question. I mean, you know, it's great that you've got an agreement with, is it the Green Sands Trust or whose land you're on?
We work very well with the landowner as well, so
Yeah.
we've got permission from them. If it's dead, it's dead. It's no longer part of the crop. I mean, unfortunately, today 3 of the ones I had to take down were still green. That's obviously going to be a loss of revenue in the future. But we're allowed to keep the trails clear, so yeah, that's the way it is.
So yeah, perhaps it's about, you know, trying to flow that knowledge down to other trail associations where they have the opportunity, or, you know, if there's anything they could do along those lines. You know, actually, yeah, because, you know, it's going to be the trail associations themselves that have the knowledge and are riding those trails on a regular basis to at least spot those trees, I suppose. Ross?
I think we've just got to be careful again, going back to messaging, about what message we put out. One of the trail associations I do some work with, we've internally put a call out for help and support, and sort of earmarked the areas where it's been identified. I mean, the forest is devastated, and we're talking huge, mature, big trees that have come down. And obviously there's a real hazard and a risk with that, particularly when they're propped up and loaded trees. So yeah, it's just being careful what the message that you put out, and asking what the ask is of people. What you don't want is somebody with a have-a-go chainsaw going out and causing more damage to themselves.
Could I just
absolutely.
finish that one off by saying that we're fortunate we do have somebody with a chainsaw ticket on our team, so it does make life an awful lot easier.
Yeah, we do ourselves, Mike, but it's just, I suppose it's that case of someone does a bit of pruning in their back garden, or but you ask for some support because there's such vast devastation, and then they go out thinking they're going to do the right thing, and they don't have the ticket, but they have the equipment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I understand what you say, but I suppose it's each association's operating process. We have very specific leaders who have to be present, so we don't get people going out and just hacking. We used to have it, and you can understand why we don't have it now.
Yeah, totally.
Then again, in a lot of landowners' cases, even if you've got a ticket that would allow you, you know, to operate that chainsaw in a commercial context, you know, they still won't let you on because you're not an approved contractor, for example. You know, there are lots of hoops that unfortunately national owners ask people to jump through. Jez?
Yeah, I mean, I've been up to Stainburn today and done a trail walk. Now, as such, I have no, I've got lots of experience, but I'm not an official trail inspector. But it's not hard to walk round and see trees that are a problem and report them back. So, yeah, if the root plate's lifting, if they're hanging up, etc. So I have, and if there's occasionally there's small trees. I mean, we're not allowed to use any power tools or anything like that. So I have a handsaw. And the general rule of thumb is if it's thicker than your arm, you can't take it down. But I must admit, I'm very, very careful to look at things from a point of view going, the risk reward, shall we call it, the risk to it dropping on somebody, to me being actually physically able to get it down, means that I will, on occasions, knock trees down that I know I can safely get down. I would never attempt to take anything down that I just think I'm going to leave it in a worse state. But literally just walking around as a trail association and looking at the trails and going, yeah, everything's fine, nothing's changed, which is what I've done today. And I've emailed the rec ranger to say Stainburn is okay. That means that they can concentrate on Dalby because they've got major problems there. So I don't see any issues with, as a trail association, walking around, just looking up. It's easy to spot when you've got a problem. and getting some, and at least you've reported it and put it. This is the thing of putting it back to the land manager in a responsible way, so the land manager can then make the decision as to whether they feel they have to come out and take it down.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously certainly the storm birch trees probably all might have been able to be identified beforehand, because there was just the occasional tree that fell over the trail. The Storm Darragh trails, by the sound of it, and Ross will know much better than I, being local to it, and I've probably seen a lot of it. You know, I'm sure you couldn't have spotted all of those trees beforehand. Yeah, he seems to be agreeing with me.
No,
so yeah,
yeah, not at all, Robin.
And just make sure that Stainburn clear. Sorry.
Go on, Ross.
No, it's all right, Jez. No, not at all, Robin. There was far too many. They're predominantly pine trees. The root plate is broad but not deep. It just lifts and knocks another one over. There's no way you could have identified all of those trees that would have come down. I mean, you could look at wind direction and predict where it might hit, but I don't think there's anything you could have done about it. It's just a clear up operation afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, one of the before I'll come to you, Bern, in a second. Dave, I'll come to you after that. And I had noticed you'd said you had your hand up before you put your hand up, but it's good that you worked it out. Yeah, I mean, I suppose part of the issue is even if we had money on hand to give to these local trade associations, and obviously that's one thing I'm asking, we'll be asking people to do when we do the PR around the damage that's been done, is Trail Collective North Wales Collective's case, for example, because you don't have because they don't have permission to look after their trails, they can't really do much with that money. Like it's even throwing money at it is not a, how do we solve that problem? I'm just wondering if there's more, if it's more about giving, in Wales's case, NRW money so they can get more contractors in to clear the trees quicker, or things like that. And obviously that's not something we can do in this instance, but just moving forward, obviously storms are going to be a fact of life moving forward, more and more so as they get stronger and stronger through climate change. But that was a question to all of you and nobody at the same time, so no one's going to answer that. So Bern, over to you.
Yeah, no, just to kind of agree with some of the participants with regards to this issue. We've had widespread destruction of trails, and a lot of the trails are unsanctioned. So, for example, today with the Cave Hill Club Trail Association, I was up and was able to see some of the trees, took photographs of them, send them to the council, to the land managers, and they'll send out. We only have permission to use handsaws or hand tools, so they'll send out a chainsaw crews and they'll clear the trails probably within a week. But I think what sort of concerns me is there's other forests like Tullymore and the foot of the Mourns, Donard, where there's a lot of trees down, and forestry don't recognise mountain bikers. They won't recognise the trails, any of the representation, and so they won't clear those trails. And what's going to happen is the kids will go in with chainsaws, which has happened in the past, and they'll clear them themselves. And it's kind of an accident waiting to happen, and there's very little we can do about it. And it does, Stevie's on this call as well, I'm sure will agree. It's a frightening situation that whenever there isn't good communication or a good relations with the landowners, and there are trails on their land and their forests, and it's a major public sector organisation, it's frightening, because people will go, the riders will go in and clear it themselves because they like the trails, they want to use them, and if they can't get officialdom to clear them, they're going to do it themselves, and they're not trained, and they're just battery operated chainsaws are 50-60 quid, and they're easily bought, and it's frightening. Some of and some of them will post photographs while they're doing it and post videos, and I've seen them, and it's health and safety is just nowhere to be seen, and you're kind of looking and thinking, my God, what's going to be? It does take somebody to lose an arm or leg or something, a fatality, before the landowners will actually wake up and do something about it. Just my.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, having grown up with the Surrey Hills as my local trails, and all of those trails are unofficial. And when trees come down, locals just go out and clear the trees. And in a lot of instances, let's face it, they're quite often tree surgeons, so they are professionals and they know what they're doing. But that's not always the case. Quite often, it is, as you say, Bern, it's someone that's just bought a £50 electric chainsaw off Amazon and have gone out and done it themselves. And the more when you're a sort of an uneducated layperson, as I was at the time, you don't really see the dangers of that or think it's a problem. You just think it's a good thing that they're going out and clearing the trails. If you look into it a bit more, understand, actually, Jesus Christ, it's one of the most dangerous things you can do is operate a chainsaw, let alone a wind-blown tree that's under stress, etc., etc. Perhaps that's more, going back to the first part of the call, perhaps that's part of one of Dave's work packages is actually, explain to people the dangers of trying to deal with fallen trees on your own. But that doesn't solve the problem. That might avoid the injuries, but then that would still mean the trees are still down over the trails and those trails are unrideable, which is, I suppose, the main thing. And to your point, Bern, the most important thing is to get the landowners to care about those trails so they clear the trees themselves in a safe manner. Dave?
Yeah, trees, chainsaws, yes. I think the whole of mountain biking needs to get away from the glorification of the chainsaw. It seemed to be a symbol of trail building, and big land managers are rightfully scared witless about unauthorized, incompetent users on their land with them. So yeah, some kind of piece of work of what to do correctly, some kind of storm guidance is something I do want to speak to the land managers about. And the more we can again get done in that tolerance and stewardship and then adoption space, we know where to go to when a tree has come down. And it does work. In Davies, we've got trails that are sitting in the tolerance and stewardship space that they will come and remove trees from, where even though they're not the official trails. However, the one point I was coming in to make was, can you see the screen there? I've just tried to share.
Not yet. Oh, yes, appearing now.
We've got to be patient. Our trees, that's Davies. In the red circle there, that's my friend and his son. That's the track to their house. And this is 3 days after the storm. And they're not coming out for a week. And that's NRW land. So again, that's their track. It's covered in matchsticks. So mountain bike trails will be on the list, but there's a lot of people who live and work in the forest who are still stuck in their houses in Wales. So it'll take time for them to come there. So I think a bit of sort of understanding and empathy is worth bearing in mind. And then in the long term, try and get those processes in place so we can capture, take a photo of the tree, get the grid reference, get the what 3 words, and then pass it on. It'll be on the list.
Okay, cool. Anyone else got anything to add or anything else they want to raise? Doesn't look like it. Well, look, I will just over 2 hours. That's not too bad. Dave, look, thank you so much for your time tonight, and thank you for presenting everything to us. I stress again that the UK MTB Trail Alliance and others are probably do stand by ready to cooperate in any way we can with any of the work packages, and really would like to do so as soon as possible. But yeah, thank you, and thank you for everyone that's joined us this evening, and thank you all for your contributions. It's been really great. Thank you so much, guys.